It's been almost 2 decades since we started our journey to educate and help you take action so you may better manage your financial future. Our goal is to help you accomplish your life's purpose. This podcast reveals financial tips, strategies, and insights that will help you to set your financial goals and guide you along the way. This is Managing Your Financial Future, brought to you by the advisors at Lucia Capital Group. Managing Your Financial Future. Hey, thanks for joining us, folks. Great to be back once again. I'm Johnny Dean. I'm your podcast host and not an advisor, but I've got my advisor here. Say hello, Professor Rick Plum.
Hello, hello, hello.
Certified financial planner.
Yes.
Professional. I never know where to throw that in, but you are a CFP professional, and you've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. We've taken our roles very seriously.
I was talking to somebody who's been listening to us for a long time, and they were talking about, I've been listening to you guys since you got your CFP back in like 2003. I said, well, I got my CFP in 1990, so you haven't been listening to that.
Yeah, imagine that. Somebody who's been listening for almost 20 years still has only heard like 2/3 of the things that we've been doing since the early 1990s. Anyway, welcome back, folks. Good to have you here. I had mentioned at the end of last week that I thought I was going to get Jonathan Savona, who's also a CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professional, with the Lucia Capital Group. He's unavailable today. He's got client meetings all day, which is fine. And that's a good thing.
He's got work to do.
He's got work to do, and so he said he would join us, I believe, next week. So I won't make any promises on that, but to talk about things like integrated portfolios. This is important stuff.
Integrated financial planning.
I mean, financial planning. I'm sorry. Yes. Integrated financial planning.
Which is more than just asset management.
Yes, and it's something that if you're looking to talk, if you've never talked to an advisor, you may not know what to expect, not only what to expect, but what the advisor should be providing for you. And I think we need to sort of let people know that. Many of the people who, in fact, maybe most of the people who listen to this do have a financial advisor, many of them working with you or one of the Lucia Capital Group advisors.
That's a good thing.
That is a good thing. But in case you're not, and you're looking to, hire an advisor, you're thinking about it, this is going to be stuff that you need to know, and this will give you an idea next week, I believe.
And that's next week, not this
next week. That'll give you an idea of what to expect. So I just wanted to give you a little preview of that. But this week we got something different. Now, last week we had a great discussion on buckets. That always elicits some comments. I wanted to shift gears this time and get away from the bucket strategy discussion and talk about something that's also extremely relevant to people, not just who are retired, but people who are younger. This is the whole idea of a 401k. Now, 401ks have been around for almost 50 years, I think. 45,
in
anyway.
the 70s.
It was either 74 or 78, something like that. I can't remember. As pensions became less popular, I don't even want to use that term. But
they became expensive, and companies were looking away to not have that expense.
Yeah, because they were responsible for investing and all that stuff. And so to get away from that, the 401k was eventually established where people could take a percentage of you know how it works. Take a percentage of your pay out of your paycheck. Most of the time it's post-tax or pre-tax. Sometimes it's post-tax. But it's a way to systematically save for retirement. Take take
the money out of your site. Mm-hmm. Have it taken away before it hits your checking account, and have an ability to save on an easy way where it's not you doing it. You get your paycheck every pay period, whether it's week, month, whatever it is, and you spend it. And then we don't necessarily save very well with that aspect. But if it's taken away from us and put into an investment before we see our paycheck,
we don't even know we're doing it.
It works very well.
Yes, over long periods of time.
And it can't work very well.
It can't. We won't say it's going to work every single time, but it's investing, and as long as you look at investing over a long period of time, not just 1, 2, 3 years, but over a good 15, 20 years and more, it can turn out well. Just watching the balance grow eventually, potentially, over that period of time.
And most people that have 401ks, they don't watch it, hopefully don't watch it every day, every week. I hope
you don't.
And this year you may not want to open your statements too often, but unless you're getting ready to retire and you're out actually getting, towards that planning process. But especially for younger people, you don't want to see it. In fact, it's a weird thing, the attitude of a younger investor in the 401k versus an older investor in the 401k, because what we want out of our returns is in many cases very different.
Yeah, have you had people come and talk to you about this?
Recently, I've had a couple of clients whose children are starting into their first jobs, or where they have the option of be part of a 401k, and the parents are, yes, you're doing a 401k, but I need my new car. No, you need to do your 401k at least
right.
to some extent. And so they're asking about what type of an allocation. And we go through and we talk about
somebody in their for their kids in their
20s.
early to mid 20s,
yes,
maybe?
In the mid to late 20s, 25, 26, 28, somewhere in there. And when we talk about the allocation that would maybe appropriate for them, it's very different than the allocation, even the growth component allocation of what the parents may be doing for their allocation. And so why is it so different? Because the younger people have a long time, and they have something that going for them that is a benefit to them that us older folks, and I'm including myself because I'm on the tail end of that older spectrum from working.
Can you believe that?
Oh, gosh. How did I get here?
I don't know. You and me both.
The volatility, when you have no money in the market, the volatility of the investments that you're investing in can be a great help to you.
When you have no money and you have a lot of time.
Correct. I forgot that last little piece.
It's an important piece.
By definition, a 20-some-year-old and a 401k means they have time for this, because it's a fairly difficult way to get process to get money out of the 401k before you're old enough.
Well, it's expensive. Let's put it that way.
Well, then with the taxes and the penalties, it's expensive to get the money out. So we're going to take time for that younger person as being known. They know they've got time for this money. But the volatility. So when you're a younger person just starting out with no money in the market, if the market goes down by 50%, oh my goodness, that's a good thing for that younger person.
Why, Professor?
Because they're going to be putting in basically the same amount. Their paycheck's going to be fairly stable for the most part, and they're going to be using 10% or some number from their paycheck into the stock market, or into their investments, I should say, on a per pay period basis. So let's say I'm putting in $200. I put
per
paycheck. I put my first $200 in, and within the next 2 weeks, when I get paid again, the market drops 50%. So my $200 turns into $100.
Well, that sounds bad.
But it's not the worst thing in the world, because I put another $200 in.
And you're buying them at shares at 50%
from 50% off from what they were, and they may go down again. But as long as I'm in a good fund, and it's just the market that's down, I'm not buying into Enron or something.
Enron.
Some people won't even know who that is or what that was. But
how long ago that was? But yeah, I get it.
The market recovers even just back to where it was when I started this. That second and third and fourth purchase has grown a lot. The first one didn't, because it just came back to where it was. So the volatility of a portfolio is something to look at. So when you're looking at which mutual funds to select, yes, you want to have good quality investment options in there, but super stable ones that go up a little bit every year, or even do the average market every year, that may be for part of the portfolio. You want to have some of that for your foundation. But taking some of these other ones that over the last 5-10 years, maybe their returns aren't as good on a buy and hold basis as just the S&P 500, whatever, but their volatility was fairly extreme. You may want to involve some of those in the portfolio as well.
If you're young,
I want to
go back.
Time. You got to have time for this.
These are the kids
and that's why that kid's portfolio may be different than the parent's portfolio, who is 55, 60 years of age at this time, 40, even 50 years of age. Because what we're trying to achieve from the portfolio, when you've got money in the portfolio, you definitely don't want to see it go down by 20, 30, 40%. That hurts. That doesn't feel good. When you've got nothing in it and you're buying in, and everything that you're going to be buying in is being accumulated on future contributions, not on past contributions, volatility works extremely well. So we're looking at how do we invest differently for that 25-year-old, 45-year-old, 60-year-old. Now, just because you're 60 years old, 55, 60, 70, doesn't mean that your ongoing contributions change that dramatically. Your ongoing contribution can still be a little more aggressive. But what you do is when you get older, you change the existing assets. So when I'm starting, if the portfolio goes down by 20, 30%, I'm not that worried.
You mean starting as a young person?
As a young person. If I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, I don't, have accumulated, $500,000, $1 million, whatever the number is. I'm not real happy when I see the portfolio go down by 20, 30%. And especially if I'm 5 to 8 years out from retirement, I want to start bringing that volatility away from and managing it to my benefit rather than just taking the market's, whim and when I can retire. So as I get close to retirement, I want to take and safen up my existing assets. But that doesn't mean I want to safen up my ongoing contributions. My ongoing contributions, I still want the volatility. And the reality is when I'm 55, 60, 65 years old, those ongoing contributions, they still have time. I may be retiring in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but the contributions I'm saving now as a 65-year-old, whatever age I am, they're not the money I'm going to spend the first couple of years in retirement. They're the money I'm going to spend at the end of retirement.
15 plus years.
The money I'm going to spend at the beginning of retirement, I am going to take out of the aggressive portfolio and put into progressively safer portfolios, depending upon how long it is before I'm going to start spending the money. So we take the existing money and move it to a balanced portfolio. We move it to a stable value fund. We move it to something.
This is for an older person?
For the older
Correct.
person.
For the one who's 5, 6, 7, 8 years from retirement.
As we get closer to that retirement date, we safen up the existing money because I don't want to see it go down in value.
You safen up some of it.
Well, the appropriate amount.
Yeah.
That's where the buckets come into play and the time horizon especially comes into play.
Yeah.
When am I going to need to start taking it? How much am I going to need to start taking? And can I even get to it? That's another thing we could talk about for somebody who may be wanting to retire
early?
Before 59 and a half. There are ways to do it. But it's a matter of we start off with a fairly volatile portfolio. We build our assets. The hardest part about creating an investment portfolio, accumulating an investment portfolio, is not dealing with the volatility of the market. That is to your benefit. The hardest part about creating an investment portfolio is the discipline of actually getting a crowbar out and pulling the money out of your wallet and getting it into the investment.
Hopefully before it's hit your wallet.
Yeah, but that's why 401ks work as well as they do.
Yeah.
But starting that discipline, being able to, the hardest part of creating an investment portfolio is completely in your control.
Getting up and doing it.
Just doing it. But once you start getting closer to retirement, the hardest part of transitioning from a accumulation phase of investing, which time is your friend, volatility is your friend, and then changing over to a distribution phase, your retirement phase, or whatever financial goal. It might be you're saving for education. That's, and
there's some shorter term goal.
There's some distribution aspect. You need to start taking money out of the portfolio to pay for whatever your goal is. That is much more difficult because now that volatility that has been your friend for the last 30 years, that movement of the market that you have no control over, which was your friend, is now your enemy. And so the hardest part of creating the distribution phase is something that's out of your control. And so you have to find a way to come back and control it. How do you control it? By not accepting the risk of the market, by creating areas, buckets, but you do this in your portfolio as you get close to retirement. And so that's why when we talk to people about their allocations, whether their contribution allocation, their existing plan allocation, they change over time. And so a younger person, I've been helping some people create their portfolios, their ongoing contribution strategies. They're much more aggressive than their parents' overall strategy.
Well, they probably should be based on the amount of time they have, right?
And then as their parents are doing something, now the parents' contribution strategy may not be totally different, but the overall current allocation is very different.
How would you talk about safening up somebody's a portion of their 401k when they're 5, 6, 7,
8 years out, depending upon risk tolerance
from retirement? So what if you had somebody who is 100% still, they're 6, 7 years from retirement, they are 100% and have been 100% aggressive growth, let's just say hypothetically, and they come to you and they say, "Gee, Professor Plum, I'm kind of concerned. I'm going to retire in about 7 years, and I think I should safen up some of this, but doggone it, the markets are down this year, and this does not seem like a good time to do it."
If you got 7 or 8 years, this may not be the best time to start creating your buckets. We may wait a little bit to see what this market does, and hopefully it doesn't go down a lot further.
Mm-hmm.
the ideal is to, and this is where people and emotions and human issues, we should have been setting it up when the markets are at all-time highs.
Although you don't know where the high is, but yes,
when you're way
absolutely.
above it, we talked about last year being up 28%. That's better than expected. If you're looking at retirement in the next 7-8 years, that's it. But the hard thing is, people believe that when the market's on a roll, it's going to continue to be on a roll.
Do you know that's actually true? I mean, I know you know that's true because you said it. But I talked last week about by the numbers.
Right.
This person who sends us this is I just saw this as you mentioned this. They say humans are predisposed to straight line, they call it, their future expectations. In other words, when the stock market is on a bull run, many investors see their good fortune continuing unabated. In other words, it's going to go on forever. And on the other hand, when the stock market is in a bear market fall, many investors cannot see the downtimes ever ending. Right. They said both assumptions are wrong. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's a perfect point to bring up that you just did.
Right. And so the problem is when the markets are going great, and we're way ahead of where we expected to be, and when we have, we're doing some projections and doing some planning, we say, you know what, you are on track to be able to retire when you want to retire, as long as the market doesn't hurt you. So let's start making the movements now, and that means getting some of the money away from the market. But on the other side, and now you're talking about this isn't the end of the world.
Yeah, historically, let's just say they've always recovered.
Well, and if they don't recover, guess what? This doesn't matter.
You got bigger problems than your 401k.
So at some point, or whatever the case.
Sure.
So it's a matter of doing things that kind of go against the grain. You start taking money out of the portfolio, out of that risky side of the portfolio that has been doing really well.
Out of your 401k, you're saying, your 401k allocation.
Well, whether it's 401k or overall, because some people are starting their new 401ks. They've changed jobs at age 55, and they've got a brand new 401k, but they've got an old 401k. So we're looking at the overall portfolio and trying to figure out where is the money going to come from when they want to retire. And this new 401k may be all growth, all growth all day, all the time, because they don't have any money in it yet. They just started the job, and so that's a different game. But they have the old 401k. Maybe they rolled it to an IRA. Maybe they left it the old 401k. So how do we take a look at the overall picture? We've got to create the portfolio appropriately, and the best time to take money and start safening it up is when you have the money, before you lose it. Before the market takes some of it away from you.
Psychologically, that's so hard for some people. It's very hard to do. Because they're afraid they're going to miss out on gains.
And the worst time, so there's another one for by the numbers.
Yes.
There's two pains that we could potentially, right now, the question is, should we be investing in the market? And so the question is really, realistically, if you start investing today, or if you had a lump sum and you invested it today, and the market went down by another 40%, that's bad. I mean, that hurts.
Sure.
But what about if you did not invest today with that lump sum and the market goes up by 40% and you missed out on that 40% return? Which one hurts worse?
Boy, is that a question for me?
That's a question for anybody who's thinking about investing right now.
All right, let's say I said that the losing 40% would hurt worse.
Then don't invest today. But that doesn't mean get out of the market. I'm talking about new money coming in. Like you just won the lottery.
Yeah, right. You have a lump sum to throw in.
And and the 25-year-old may have a completely different answer than you.
Well, and this points out the importance of time horizon, which is a big part of financial planning. Time horizon. How much time do you have? The more time you have, probably the more you can take. Now, let's talk about, you mentioned the harder part of, let's stick with the 401k.
Okay.
The harder part of investing and is not the accumulation of it. It's when you need to start taking money out.
It's a transition from building it to distributing it.
Yes. Now, you've got a 401k. I'm going to guess that many people who are retired, they hit age 60-something, 65, say, they've got a good portion, if not maybe the majority of their money is sitting in a 401k, money that they've been saving over the last 30, 40 years. And a good part of their net worth, or let's just say a good part of their portfolio, I should say, is tied up in this 401k. When they retire, when should they start taking that money out? I mean, it's taxable, presumably.
Well, it's going to be taxable if it's in a 401k, not a Roth 401k.
No, I'm speaking of a traditional 401k. It's going to be taxable to you. When do you start taking that money out of the 401k? Because I've heard, and I've seen this all on the internet. I've seen this online. Don't ever pay taxes on it until you are forced to do so at required minimum distribution age, which is currently age 72. So you should not, they would say, do not take money out of your 401k until you're required to do so. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a good thing or not?
As a general statement, I would say that's not necessarily a good thing, because let's take somebody who I know. I was talking to somebody the other day. They're getting ready to retire. They're 58. They're not going to have a pension. They're not going to have Social Security, obviously, yet. They're not old enough.
Right.
And they do have some personal money, a decent amount. And they have a larger, though, tax-deferred portfolio, combinations of 401ks and IRAs. Should they live off their personal money and defer taking any money from the IRA? And there's two answers to that. And the first, well, there's one answer to that, but there's two options to doing it the correct way. The answer is no. They should be using the tax brackets to their advantage. They're going to retire. They're going to have no income. Like I said, there's no Social Security. There's no pensions. So where are they going to live? They can live off of the $70,000-$80,000 a year from their personal portfolio, drawing it down over. They've got $1 million there, and they could draw that down between now and age 72, taking the $80,000, and they wouldn't owe anything in taxes.
Because of the tax bracket they're in,
and they would be really.
You're talking about a married couple here.
A married couple, yes.
Yeah. All right.
And they don't have to worry about getting money out of a 401k. They don't have to worry about getting money out of an IRA pre-59 and a half. Mm-hmm. It's simple. So they can do that. But the problem is they've also got $2 million in their deferred accounts. And if they don't take any money out of it for the next 12, 14 years, that $2 million could be $5, $6, $7 million by the time they get around to required minimum distribution age. And they're taking their Social Security at that time. So they're going to have a ton of taxable. 85% of the Social Security is going to be taxable. All the distribution is going to be taxable from that required minimum distribution. They're going to go from paying almost no taxes to paying a boatload of taxes for the rest of their lives. And we know with the new RMD rules for beneficiaries, whatever's left has to come out within 10 years to their heirs.
Sure.
And if before that there's a surviving spouse, their tax brackets are even same brackets, but the amount of money we can have in each bracket is so much less.
Yeah.
They're going to have a much higher tax bill than what the couple does. So that's not a good strategy. There's two ways to remedy that strategy. One is to use the IRA as or 401k for that matter, as the living distribution. I take my $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year from my IRAs, pay taxes at what is currently on that amount of income, a 12% income tax bracket.
So you are paying taxes, but you're paying
it at 12%. Okay, I'm not paying nothing, but I'm paying it at 12% instead of what I will be paying later on. And then my IRA now is basically static. It's not growing. My personal accounts, I'm not touching it. So my IRA has not come down greatly.
Let me just, so for people who are trying to envision this, the reason your IRA or your 401k, let's just say any of
tax-deferred accounts,
your tax-deferred accounts are not growing is because you're taking money out of those accounts to live on. Yes, you're paying some taxes.
Yeah, I'm taking $100,000 a year out of it, and I'm paying 12% on some of it, not all of it, because I do have a standard deduction. But my IRA at RMD age is now probably right around the same $2 million. And so my RMD is still right around what I'm taking out now, give or take. But my personal account has now grown.
Potentially.
I mean, we can use the exact same investments just in different accounts.
Sure. Yeah.
So I've done a much more. The other way, which this individual I was speaking with is going to actually employ, is they're not going to live off the IRA. They're going to live off the personal money.
But didn't you just say that you would prefer not to do that?
I said I would prefer not to go completely without using the IRA.
Okay.
But there are things I can do with the IRA between now and age 72 that make sense. And what he's going to do is he's going to convert that $100,000+ a year to Roth IRA. So he's basically transitioning his personal money to Roth money by spending the personal money and converting to Roth IRA with his IRA every year. So when he gets out to age 72, his IRA will be about that same $2.5 million.
But isn't he going to be
But
paying...
he'll have $3 million in his Roth IRA, and he will have depleted his personal money pretty much.
So he will be paying taxes on that converted money, but again,
10 to 12%.
Now, but he's also taking personal money.
He's living personal money.
Now, a question from somebody might be, well, wait a minute. If I'm taking $80,000 of personal money, aren't I paying taxes on that?
No. If I have, $500,000 in the bank, let's play
in the bank.
In a bank, what is a really good interest rate on a bank account right now?
I don't even know. I would be happy with 2.
Well, I'm getting close to 2 on mine, so.
All right. Good for you.
Yeah, whatever. So I've got $500,000 and I'm earning 2%. What's that? $10,000?
Yeah.
So I got to pay tax. Well, $10,000 is on top of my IRA distribution. I've got a $25,000 standard deduction. So,
All right, so you're paying a little bit.
But I'm pulling principal out of that bank account. This is a buckets plan. I mean, we always come back to buckets.
We do.
Even when we're not trying to specifically talk about buckets.
But it does lead back. Everything leads back to buckets.
So we're spending principal and interest. The principal in my personal account has already been taxed. It's only the interest, and the interest is going to be taxed whether I spend it or don't spend it. And so I have a little bit of tax there, but not much. And so I spend that. I spend it over the next 10, 15 years or however long it is, how much time I have, depending upon your specific issue. And I'm managing not just this year's tax bill. I'm managing the tax bill projected over the rest of my life, my surviving spouse's life, and my heir's life.
So the choice seems to be pay little or zero taxes between, say, age 62 and 72.
Well, if you didn't do the conversions, didn't live off the IRA, you could set it up to pay basically no taxes.
Okay, so but then at age 72, you hit this wall where all of a sudden
you're in the 22, 24 because higher bracket. You've got IRMA issues with your Social Security, Medicare premiums. Your 85% of your Social Security is taxable. You got taxes for the rest of your life, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point.
Right. The other choice is that you prefer to see, to help manage your taxes, is to pay maybe a little bit now.
Pay 10, 12% now.
Between age 60-something and age 72. Reduce the size, thereby reducing the size of your, I'm saying 401k or your IRA. We'll just say your deferred money, which leaves you a lot lower, potentially, required minimum distribution come age 72.
Right. And then if you're doing the conversions, it makes a nice way for a surviving spouse to have a lot of tax-free income, your heirs to have a lot of tax-free income if that's an issue. Some people will get out there and say, you know what the heirs do is what the heirs, if they have to pay tax, so be it. I don't care. But
does this show to you the importance of having, is it better off for a retiree, somebody who's taking distributions from their portfolio? You got to be saying it's better to have post-tax money than pre-tax money at that point, if possible.
Well, if I were to go to sleep when I'm 25 and wake up when I'm 65 and going to retire, I would prefer to have, and I could have $1 million portfolio at that time. I'd rather have it be Roth.
Of course. Yes.
And if I can't have Roth, I'd rather have it be personal money. Mm-hmm. And if I can't have that, well, I'll take the $1 million in the IRA.
Right.
But the problem is that's assuming I didn't have any in the working years. Now I've got a decision. Do I want that tax deduction or not while I'm working? And most people want the tax deduction. So by definition, they're going to get the tax deduction, which means the taxable event when they retire. That isn't necessarily wrong. It's just a matter of, if you look at it just at one point in time, yeah, I'd rather have had the Roth. But what if during those years when I was working, I was making, $400,000 or $500,000? I'm in a 37% federal bracket. I live in a state that I happen to live in that has a fairly high, so I'm paying, 10+% there. I'm paying almost 50% taxes on that last $10,000-$20,000 in tax in earnings that I have.
The deduction
helps out a lot. And then when I'm in retirement, if I can pull it out in a 10 or 12% bracket, So when I look at the big picture there, the tax deduction was better than having $1 million Roth, because if I had $1 million Roth and retirement at 65 with that scenario, I may have been able to have a $2 million IRA because I had so much more money saved and less in taxes. I could save more money
because you would have been paying taxes on that.
But it, you know, so it's hard to say, yeah, well, if I woke up at retirement, yeah, I want the Roth. But to get the Roth may have been too painful during my working years.
So what you're saying also here is don't waste the opportunity to take advantage of a low tax bracket.
Oh, definitely. And to not waste it, you have to know it.
Yeah.
And I see people, and they, you know, on their tax returns, it tells them their nominal, their average tax bracket. And they say, well, my average bracket wasn't too bad. Well, that doesn't mean that the last dollars you showed up on your return were very good, because the average bracket is after all deductions, after your standard deduction. It's based on what is the total tax you paid on your taxable income. And it may be, you know, 8, 10, 12%. But that last 10,000 that came in cost me 22%. And so if I can reduce that last 10,000 or take it from a different area, I may be able to save some money on my taxability and my Social Security. So you have to actually know how the taxes work and the tax brackets work. But there's a lot of people, even people that are currently taking their required or minimum distributions, they've already got their Social Security. They're 75 years old. They may still have room in the bracket that they have that won't push them into another bracket. They're going to be in that bracket for the rest of their life unless Congress or the current brackets are set to sunset in 2026.
In a couple of years, yeah.
And so they're going to go up unless Congress does something. And do we think Congress is going to do something that brings them down or even keeps them where they are? Hard to say. I don't see them coming down. But so we know that we're going to be in this bracket or higher bracket in the future. Let's use the bracket that we have, as long as we don't go into IRMA, the Medicare surtaxes, or go further into IRMA.
IRMA, let's explain very quickly. The Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, IRMAA.
For people that have, for singles and married, they have different amounts, but that are what Congress considers to be high income. Roughly $90,000 for a single individual, $180,000 for a married couple. If your gross income is higher than that, then you have the privilege of paying more for your Medicare premiums.
Yeah.
And they look at the income from 2 years ago, unless you have a life-changing event like a divorce or a retirement for this year, and then they can look at this year instead of 2 years ago. But basically, your Medicare premium can go up quite a bit. Yeah. And it is phased in, but once you go $1 into the bracket, you know, the IRMA bracket, you're paying the higher premium.
You're in. So when we say things like IRMA, I want to make sure people understand.
You're paying more in taxes.
Yeah, it's Medicare.
It's a Medicare tax. It's not an income tax, but it's something to look out for. And for people on the lesser than rich, what Congress calls rich, people in the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 range, you have to look at what is this new conversion or distribution doing to my Social Security, the taxes on my Social Security, because that Social Security taxability is phased in.
Just want to make sure people understood what we're talking about when you say that.
So not only do you have to understand the brackets and the standard deduction, your itemized deductions, and how they work, you have to understand the interrelationship between Social Security, the taxability of Social Security, and your other income. You have to understand where the IRMA brackets hit, the net investment income tax brackets hit. You know,
you don't have to understand that. All you got to do is talk to an advisor who understands all of this. You understand all of this.
And it's fun.
How many times have we said that after podcast? It's fun for you, but it can get complicated, and it's one of the reasons that and then when you mix this in with your entire bucket strategy, your overall strategy, that's another element of all of this. It can actually get complicated.
And all of this is kind of part of what we're going to be talking about next week with Jonathan on the integrated financial planning concept of bringing in not just picking a mutual fund or a stock or this, you know, it's the taxation, it's the pensions, when to, which pension option to take, lump sum, joint survivor, 50%, 100%, you know, what's this 10-year certain option thingy, your taxation, your
estate planning,
your beneficiaries, all these, you know, I was discussing with one person this morning, their homeowners insurance, it went up by 33%. And so we were talking about, you know, what's going on there, and because that's a budgeting issue that she wasn't expecting.
No. It's where we live, it's getting to be more common.
Well, and that's happening a lot where we live because of several issues, inflation being one. Obviously, it costs more to rebuild a house if it's destroyed, so they charge you more for it. Two, we live in an area that has these wildfire things. And then the state we live in, just as a whole, had an increase as well. So we had basically a triple whammy coming down.
Yeah. So, but there are things that happen that you may not anticipate, but
you got to build into it. You're budgeting.
Yeah, and it's all part of the financial planning process.
And the products and the investments that you use depend a lot on what's happening with that budget. How much of that budget is fixed expenses that you have to have, whether you have any fun or not, or how much of it is just, variable to the fact that, well, this year I'm going to go on 2 vacations and next year I'm going to go on 3. Or
that would be nice.
Or this year I'm going on a whirlwind international. A friend of mine's going to do the Danube cruise next year.
Sure, I've been on the Danube, you bet.
But they aren't going to do that every year.
No.
Nor do they want to do it every year. So next year is going to be a higher expense than normal.
Well, okay, so to tie this in with the 401k.
Back to that.
What I was saying was, what you were saying was that it's probably, or were you saying it's probably not a good idea to just defer your 401k all the way until you're required to do so?
When you're retired, you want to look at, can you use the tax brackets to your advantage? Or by doing nothing, are you going to hurt yourself in the future?
And that's something an advisor needs to talk to. You need to talk to your advisor about this stuff, because tax management, one of the top things that an advisor can or should be able to help you out with.
Very definitely.
If you want to talk more about this, 800-644-1150. That's Professor Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors, 800-644-1150. They all work with Professor Plum, who checks every single plan that goes out and makes sure that that they are consistent. They always are. Can I say they always are? Consistent?
Of course. Well, we do the same things.
Well, sure we do. Yes. So you know what you're going to get. 800-644-1150. Or go to luciacap.com if you want some more information on what happens with an advisor through Lucia Capital Group, luciacap.com. LUCIACAP.com. Now, we talked about having Jonathan Savona on next week. Let's hope his schedule allows that. If it's just you and me next week, you'll hear me saying, doggone it, I couldn't grab Jonathan this time, but
we'll get him.
We will, because now that we've talked about it, understanding how an integrated financial plan works is really a good story arc that we're going to try to develop here over the next few weeks of this podcast. Speaking of the podcast, you want to subscribe to it? Sure. Go to Spotify. Spotify is where you can hear the podcast, of course. Those of you listening already know that. Tell your friends about it. You can subscribe and get the podcast downloaded right to your device. You will never miss an episode, and believe me, you do not want to miss an episode. We're out of time for this particular episode, as we just said. For Professor Rick Plum, Certified Financial Planner Professional, I'm Johnny Dean, your podcast host. Thanks so much for listening, and we will, of course, talk to you again next week. The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. To the extent that this material contains tax matters, it is not intended or written to be used and cannot be used by a taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding penalties that may be imposed by law. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. Different types of investments and or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. Accordingly, no client or prospective client should assume that the information presented serves as the receipt of or substitute for personalized advice from Capitalize Your Finances or from any other investment professional. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Stable value funds can be viewed as an alternative to money market funds. However, there are important differences, and stable value products can be complicated. Unlike money market funds, stable value funds are typically not registered with the SEC. In addition, they are not guaranteed by the U.S. government. The structure of or investments within stable value may vary, and it is important to consider these differences in selecting a stable value fund. Before investing, carefully consider stable value fund or mutual fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. To obtain a prospectus or summary prospectus which contains this and other information, call your financial advisor. Read the prospectus carefully before investing. S&P 500 Index is an unmanaged index and includes a representative sample of large-cap U.S. companies in leading industries. An investment may not be made directly in an index. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution or RMD in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Roth IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. The information provided is based on current laws, which are subject to change at any time. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information about Social Security benefits, visit the SSA website at ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213 to speak with an SSA representative. Rick Plum and Jonathan Savona are registered representatives with and security and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Lucia Capital Group, a separate entity from LPL Financial.